Good morning. We welcome you to the August 17th, 2022 meeting of the General Obligation Bond Housing, Human Service, and Homelessness Committee. I hereby call this meeting to order. We have interpreters today to provide Spanish translation. Would you please introduce yourselves?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good morning, my name is Elsie Duarte, and along with my colleague Carmen Cota, we will be servicing as interpreters in today's meeting. I will now introduce myself to our Spanish-speaking audience. Buenos días, mi nombre es Elsie Duarte y junto con mi colega Carmen Cota estaremos sirviéndoles como intérpretes en la reunión de hoy. Al momento de hacer un comentario público, de favor les pedimos que hable despacio, con claridad y deténgase después de cada pocas oraciones para interpretarle de la manera más completa posible. Gracias. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you for this important service. There will be a public comment period at the end of today's agenda, which will be up to 30 minutes in length. The Arizona Open Meeting Law permits committee members to listen to the comments, but prohibits members from discussing or acting on the matters presented. Speakers will have up to 2 minutes to comment. However, prior to the start of the public comment period, I may specify a briefer duration based on the volume of speakers. If you are attending in person and would like to speak, you need to sign up to speak at the kiosk located at the entrance to council chambers before the call to the public item begins. For virtual participants, registration to speak must be submitted 2 hours prior to the start of each meeting. Speakers will be called in the order received, beginning with virtual participants. For the first agenda item, I'm just going to make a few remarks. The City Council has directed the General Obligation Bond Committee to recommend a $500 million bond program to the City Council. Executive Committee has tasked this subcommittee with identifying the most urgent needs related to housing, human services, and homelessness. Staff have provided a starting point through a capital needs study. The subcommittee will also be hearing from members of the community who may have different priorities, as well as hearing the ideas of this subcommittee's members. To manage information, staff will only provide a report on a new project concept at the direction of this subcommittee. Overall, the prioritized needs identified by staff exceed the $500 million bond program total. So through this process, the subcommittee will need to avoid growing the total program beyond that is ultimately recommended by the Executive Committee. So our first agenda item is all the subcommittees have been asked to select and elect a vice chair of the subcommittee. And so there can be open discussion among the subcommittee members about interest. And if there's a subcommittee member that would like to propose a vice chair, I'm open to that right now. Jane, go ahead.
Yes, Chair Yazzie Devine, thank you. I would like to nominate Suzanne Feaster as vice chair of this committee.
So we have one nomination. Are there any others? Suzanne is virtual with us. Are any comments, Suzanne?
No, I would be honored to serve with you and to support the committee. I apologize for being virtual, and I should be able to be in person going forward.
No other recommendations? Do we need to vote? Is this formal, or do I just appoint? Okay.
I second the motion.
So we have our second, and then we'll go ahead and take a vote. Do I just say all in favor? All in favor, say aye.
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 Anyone opposed? Anyone abstaining?
I'll abstain.
Suzanne abstains. So the motion carries, and we have a new vice chair of the subcommittee, Suzanne Feaster. Thank you. Thank you, committee members.
Thank you.
So our next agenda item is a staff presentation on the capital needs study, and I think we have 3 different staff members that will be doing those presentations. So I'll turn it over to the staff now.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. Good morning, members of the subcommittee. My name is Gina Montes. I'm a deputy city manager overseeing the housing department and human services and homeless services. So this morning, we have 3 staff along with myself who will be presenting to you. We have Marshall Franklin, who's Human Services Director, Rachel Milne, who is our Deputy Human Services Director over Homeless Services, and Titus Matthew, Housing Director. And I'll go ahead and kick us off and get started. So as part of our presentation this morning, we're going to be doing a quick recap of just the capital needs study and what our charge was in terms of prioritizing the items we put forward. And then as part of that, we're going to give you some context, even on areas where we did not have a staff-submitted item, to give you just an idea of kind of where we are as an organization and what our investments are that are upcoming and in the future. And then we'll review in the order of human services, homeless services, and housing as far as the capital needs and what has been provided. So our charge as staff was to focus on the renovation, replacement, and other projects that were city operated that would have minimal general fund operating costs. As we move forward into the future, we always have to keep that in mind, that anything that we build, we still have to operate, and understanding we need to account for that. The other priority was really an assessment of needs that cannot be deferred, and also reflecting a balance between the different service areas. This will really be the starting point for the subcommittee's work, what the staff has put forward. The subcommittees will also be able to hear ideas proposed by the public. And then, of course, the final deliverable for the subcommittee will be a recommendation to the City Council for these areas. So now I'll turn it over to Marshall Franklin, who will review human services.
Thank you, Deputy City Manager Montes. Good morning, Madam Chair and subcommittee members. Again, I am Marshall Franklin, Human Services Director, and pleased to provide an overview of the Human Services Department proposed 2023 General Bond Program projects. Our mission, through leadership, collaboration, education, and essential services, the Human Services Department enhances the health, wellness, and quality of life for our residents. It is our North Star, if you will, that we use to ensure that any decisions, recommendations, and programmatic changes are based on enriching the lives of our residents. Specific to our operations, the Human Services Department has 449 approved positions and a 22-23 fiscal year operating budget of over $195 million. And through our department, we provide a variety of services to the public, including rental assistance, landlord and tenant services, senior services, workforce services, Head Start, victim services through our Family Advocacy Center, just to name a few of our service delivery areas. We offer these services at various facilities located throughout the city of Phoenix through a combination of 12 department-owned buildings and several co-located facilities. For our 15 senior centers, the Human Services Department owns 4 of those buildings. For our family services centers, where we provide rent and utility assistance and landlord and tenant counseling services, we own all 3 buildings. And we own the building where the city's Family Advocacy Center is located, where we provide comprehensive services for victims of domestic violence and sexual assault. The other 4 of our 12 owned buildings are leased to the following nonprofit agencies: Friendly House, Mercy Care, Southwest Center for HIV and AIDS, and Valle del Sol. In evaluating the Human Services Department's capital needs, we use the following criteria: reviewed our non-funded 2006 bond requests, reviewed the maintenance needs for each of the 12 Human Services Department-owned buildings, and, as Deputy City Manager Montes stated earlier, assessed opportunities to expand programs that would not have a significant operating cost tied to the project. To that end, the Human Services Department proposes prioritizing capital needs for the construction of the Cesar Chavez Senior Center and renovations of the Mcdowell Senior Center, which I will discuss in further detail. And we propose for future capital need consideration the expansion of the Parsons Center for Health and Wellness, which I can provide additional information if requested. Our first proposed project is the Cesar Chavez Senior Center. At a cost of $5.74 million, we propose constructing a new 12,600 square foot multipurpose senior center to be located adjacent to the new Cesar Chavez Community Center at 37th Avenue and Baseline Road in Council District 7 and immediately adjacent to Council District 8. This proposed facility would also include a food production kitchen. By way of background, we have 3 senior centers with food production facilities. These production facilities prepare congregate meals for all 15 senior centers, as well as the meals for the home delivered meal program. A 4th production facility will relieve pressure from the other 3 facilities, as well as shorten delivery routes, as the current production facilities are located at Deer Valley Senior Center, which is in North Phoenix at 19th Avenue and Beardsley, Desert West Senior Center, which is at 65th Avenue and Virginia in West Phoenix, and Mcdowell Senior Center, located at 18th Street and Mcdowell Road in Central Phoenix. We do not currently have a production kitchen located south or west of Interstate 10, with the Pecos Senior Center being located approximately 16 miles from the nearest production facility, which is located at Mcdowell Senior Center. Additionally, a 4th production facility increases the ability for the Human Services Department to have continuity of food service operations if another facility has to temporarily close. To provide context, in June 2022, we provided over 8,300 congregate meals to our seniors and over 38,000 home-delivered meals. The Cesar Chavez Senior Center would serve seniors in the Laveen South Mountain area, and of our current senior center members, over 1,000 reside near the proposed location. The most recent American Community Survey, or census count, shows that over 25,000 adults ages 55 and older reside near the proposed Cesar Chavez Senior Center. And of note for the subcommittee, the closest senior center that a resident could attend in this area is anywhere from 5 to 10 miles away from this proposed senior center. Our second proposed location is the renovation of the Mcdowell Senior Center. This building was built in 1956 and is located at 19th Street and Mcdowell Road in Council District 8. In December 2020, Mcdowell Senior Center was listed on the Phoenix Historic Property Register as well as the National Register of Historic Places. This building has a little over 10,000 square feet and houses one of the 3 food production kitchens I mentioned when I was discussing the proposed Cesar Chavez Senior Center. The proposed renovations are to modernize all HVAC equipment, update the electrical and fire suppression systems, replace existing plumbing, and restore the building envelope and interior and meeting spaces. The projected cost for these renovations is estimated at $1.76 million, and as you can see from the pictures, we have very old systems in the building. These renovations will allow the city to preserve a city-owned historic building, extend the useful life of critical equipment and infrastructure, ensure a continuity of service by reducing the potential from unplanned closures due to major equipment failure, increase the building's energy efficiencies, and most importantly, allow us to enhance the interior spaces for our senior center members. I will now turn the presentation over to Homeless Services Deputy Director Rachel Milne.
Thank you, Director Franklin. Thank you, Madam Chair and Subcommittee. My name is
Chairwoman, if we have questions, can we answer those now? Okay.
My name is Rachel Milne, Deputy Director of the City's Homeless Services Division, which recently became a function of the City Manager's Office and reports to Deputy City Manager Gina Montes. This move is a clear demonstration of the city's commitment to homelessness and the level of priority this complex issue has within the city. The City Council also recently voted to approve a near doubling of staff in the Homeless Services Division, which will help us better respond to this growing crisis. This slide may be familiar to many of you. It denotes the Maricopa Association of Governments results from the point-in-time count for 2022. The point-in-time count is an annual one-day physical count of the number of people that are both sheltered and unsheltered in the community. While a one-day count might not be the best way to gauge the number of people experiencing homelessness in a community, it is a requirement of the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development, conducted nationwide, and does serve as a gauge of a community's homeless population over time. This one-day snapshot from January 2022 demonstrates the number of total people experiencing homelessness in our region has grown each year. There was not a count in 2021, but the growth rate in the two-year period from 2020 to 2022 is staggering. The number of people experiencing homelessness grew by 22% in that two-year time frame, and the number of people experiencing unsheltered homelessness grew by 34% over the time period. There are more people experiencing unsheltered homelessness in our community than sheltered homelessness currently. We know that these numbers are conservative and that the actual number of people is likely much higher. We also know that the COVID-19 pandemic exacerbated and continues to exacerbate unstably housed individuals' ability to stay housed. The response to the pandemic brought an incredible opportunity with one-time funding one-time federal funds to communities across the country. The City of Phoenix committed a large portion of those funds to homeless services, both expanding needed support services and some major capital improvements. The largest fund source received was from the U.S. Department of Treasury, the American Rescue Plan Act funds. The city also received one-time allocations of Emergency Solutions Grant and Community Development Block Grant funds, specifically to prevent, prepare for, and respond to the COVID-19 pandemic. The city focused a large portion of this one-time funding for capital improvements in order to make a permanent impact in the homeless service system, the goal being to increase the number of beds or units available for people experiencing homelessness who may need short, medium, or long-term assistance. We've funded projects dedicated for short-term, low-barrier emergency shelter, both in congregate and non-congregate settings. We've also funded some transitional housing projects, which are meant for people that may need more support and a longer stay before moving to their own permanent housing solution. And finally, we funded permanent supportive housing projects, which are long-term assistance projects with intense on-site support services. Some of the projects that we funded that have already come on board include Central Arizona Shelter Services, where we provided rehabilitation funds to expand the number of beds at the state's largest shelter from 425 to 600 beds, a net gain of 175 beds. The cost of this expansion was $1.5 million. The city helped the Human Service Campus acquire and install a sprung or soft-sided structure for emergency shelter, which houses 100 people per night and costs $2.5 million. Finally, the city used one of its own vacant buildings and converted it to emergency shelter. It currently serves 200 people per night. The city invested $6.3 million for renovations on this building, making a change in the city's approach to shelter. Where we historically funded existing shelter operations, the Washington Relief Shelter is a city-owned facility where we contract out for the support services. We are looking at this model for the future as well. Some projects that are expected to complete in the next year or two include Community Bridges, Inc., where we are helping them to acquire and rehabilitate a commercial building in the North Phoenix Sunny Slope area called the North Mountain Healing Center, which will result in 100 new shelter beds. This is also a partnership with Maricopa County. The city's total investment in this project is $4 million. St. Vincent de Paul was awarded $6 million from the city, which is paired with $6 million from Maricopa County and $6 million from the Arizona Department of Housing, for the new construction of Ozanam Manor 2, a transitional housing complex which will be complete in 2024 and house 100 individuals nightly. And finally, the city and the Arizona Department of Housing both provided funding for CAS's Project Haven 2. This project consists of the acquisition of an existing hotel off the I-17 in Northern and the rehabilitation necessary to convert the building to non-congregate emergency shelter. The city's investment was $4 million, and 170 new units dedicated to seniors will be on board by next summer. Finally, we've dedicated funding for the acquisition of a hotel to be converted to permanent supportive housing. This project is still in the planning stages. A site and operating partner have not yet been identified, but we have set aside $15 million for this purpose. To summarize, the city has recently helped 475 beds come into service already in 2022, including the CAS expanded beds, the Human Service Campus sprung structure, and the Washington Relief Center. In the next 2 years, 370 new beds are planned to come on board, with CAS's Project Haven 2, CBI's North Mountain Healing Center, St. Vincent de Paul's Ozanam Manor 2, and our hotel-motel conversion to permanent supportive housing. I'd now like to introduce Titus Matthew, the City of Phoenix Housing Director.
Thank you, Rachel. Madam Chair, members of the Bond Committee, my name is Titus Matthew, as Gina mentioned, and I'm the Housing Director. On behalf of the Housing Department, I would like to thank you for serving on this committee. It's an important role. The Housing Department's mission is to provide quality, affordable housing and a pathway to self-sufficiency. The department provides and oversees programs that include public housing, the Housing Choice Voucher Program, or Section 8 as it's commonly referred to, and affordable rental apartments to more than 35,000 area residents. Housing is comprised of 5 divisions and 2 functions that oversee our operations and ensure we're meeting the needs of our residents. The Housing Department's annual operations include programs that aim to serve the community both through city-owned facilities and supporting private affordable housing development. Currently, the city facilitates the operation of 41 properties and more than 5,500 units throughout the city. Additionally, we administer over 7,000 Housing Choice vouchers for Phoenix residents. The Housing Department has supported the private development of affordable housing by providing gap financing through our allocation of U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development, or HUD, in terms of home funds, which are Home Investment Partnership Program funds, many of which have supported low-income housing tax credit awardees. Since 1993, the city has supported the development of over 8,000 additional affordable housing units throughout Phoenix, with over $100 million invested from home program funds. The department's annual operating budget is $125 million for the current fiscal year, with 126 full-time employees. Presently, the 2021 allocation of $8 million of home funding will support the development of 611 multifamily housing units, in addition to providing $1.5 million in down payment assistance through our Open Doors home ownership program. To aid in incentivizing private market landlords to rent to voucher holders, a landlord incentive program was launched in 2020 and is well underway, with over 1,800 incentive payments made as of last month. I'd like to provide a brief overview of the Housing Phoenix Plan. A gap analysis was conducted that identified the city's need for over 163,000 additional housing units, with over 60% needing some sort of subsidy. While the city has made great progress towards its 50,000 unit goal, market rate development has continued to outpace affordable housing options, leaving less housing options for those residents who earn less than 60% of the area median income and the group who need it the most. Of the 22,683 units created or preserved as of June 30th of this year, 74% are market rate and only 4% were affordable housing units. The lack of quality affordable housing impacts many in our community. The average rent in the greater Phoenix area is over $1,600. This means to afford a home, a family of 3 would need to make over $65,000 annually, which equals to $31.25 per hour based on HUD's most recent area median income index. Affordable housing options in Phoenix has not kept up with demand. Therefore, the need for affordable housing is critical. Recent articles have highlighted the need for affordable housing options in Phoenix. To support affordable housing, City Council allocated American Rescue Plan Act funds, or ARPA funds. $12 million was set aside for affordable housing gap financing. In addition, $5 million was set aside for citywide community land trust. In addition, $4 million was to continue our landlord incentive program. The housing department or households who are homeless and federally housing options. $33 million will be help preserve all affordable housing units and not just the 610 units as listed in the card. The needs identified include renovations such as repairs for health and safety improvements, HVAC, mechanical, electrical, and plumbing repairs or replacements, including structural upgrades such as roofing. The affordable housing portfolio has been underfunded in its capital needs. Generally, our portfolio comprises of B- and C+ properties, which would require planned capital investments and upgrades on a yearly basis. If the investment in rehabbing and modernizing the affordable housing portfolio is not made, the assets will continue to deteriorate and eventually become untenable. This will lead to additional stress on the availability of affordable housing units in Phoenix. This funding will assist in continuing to provide affordable quality housing properties to our residents. The second proposal highlights the positive impacts we have made in the Edison Eastlake community and discuss a need for gap financing. In July 2018, the Housing Department was awarded a Choice Neighborhoods Implementation Grant by HUD in the amount of $30 million. The department has undertaken a 6-year comprehensive implementation process, replacing 577 obsolete public housing units with over 1,000 mixed income units. This plan incorporated several redevelopment areas. Saluna Phase 1A and B has been completed, which is 177 units. Harmony at the Park is under construction. This request is for the future phase of Sidney P. Osborne, or SPO, near 18th Street in Van Buren. SPO is projected to build out in 2 phases. The 2 phases has a current projected gap of $21 million. Choice neighborhood funds are limited, and we will not have enough to complete the last phase of Sidney P. Osborne. To date, city funding has not been needed to implement the housing component. All the funding has been either federal funding, choice neighborhood, home funds, low-income housing tax credits, and tax-exempt bonds or private investment. The $21 million in GEO bonds requested represents about 7% of the total funding needed to complete the entire $300 million Choice Neighborhoods housing plan, meaning that these city GEO bond funds will leverage 93% of the other non-city resources and investments. Unfortunately, labor and material costs have increased as a result of the pandemic, leading to increases in projected overall construction costs. Without the additional funding, 364 units will not be completed timely, and community revitalization would be delayed, and residents will be impacted. HUD, through the Choice Neighborhoods program, requires that we replace the original 577 public housing units in the new housing development with over 1,000 mixed-income new units to create mixed-income communities. Of the 364 total units planned at Sidney P. Osborne, 168 units are slated to be for former residents who have the right to return to the newly developed community. HUD will require that these units be built in a timely manner as part of the city's agreement with the Choice Neighborhoods program. At this point, I'm turning over the presentation to Deputy City Manager Gina Montez.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the subcommittee. That concludes really the formal part of our presentation. We're open for questions and discussion.
Thank you, Chairwoman Devine. So I just have a few questions on, I guess I'll back up to Marcella Franklin. Good morning. So I was looking at the documents that were provided to us, and it has a breakdown for the Mcdowell Senior Renovation Center. My question is, how long has these needs been identified? Is the asset owned by the city, and is there any debt on that asset? And then if you could just give us a further breakdown of what $57,000 would be needed for a study, what that study would accomplish. And just a further detailed breakdown that I know you won't have today, but if we could get a breakdown of what that $1.8 million and 87,000, all the expenses on what that actually is going to at our next meeting.
So, Chairwoman Yazzie and Subcommittee Member Vidalis, we most definitely will bring that information back to the next subcommittee meeting. Thank you.
Thank you. And then the 18 projects, or actually I'll back up to the housing and homelessness. On the presentation, is it Rachel Milne? Hey, Rachel. You have some projects here, but I don't see in our packages any project costs. Will those be provided to us? And is there a reason that they weren't provided in this packet?
Madam Chair, and Mr. Vidalis, I'll let Rachel chime in if I miss anything, but the projects that were listed, we're not requesting any funding from the bond program as a result. We're just providing context as far as we had some questions about why didn't we request any funding for additional services. So should the community or the committee like for us to provide more information on what we would, if we were to ask for an additional project, we're open to doing that. However, the projects listed, the specific costs were not provided. We can provide any detail on that. It was more to give a context. Here's what the city's investments have been in our upcoming. Also to, just to add that we have to, all of those funds were mainly one time from ARPA, and so in a few years we'll have to identify ongoing operating costs for those projects.
So then I guess my understanding, so the Community Bridges, Inc., the St. Vincent de Paul, the Central Arizona Shelter are not actual projects to be considered for the bond project?
Correct.
Okay. And then the $15 million allocation, if that's to be considered, would we be able to see what that proposal looks like and the project costs at our next meeting?
Apologies, which $15 million?
The hotel.
The hotel.
Model, hotel motel purchase, conversion to permanent supportive housing.
Sure. So that project has already been allocated ARPA funding, so we would be happy to provide you more information on that, but that's also not a request for the bond subcommittee.
Okay, thanks for clarifying. Mm-hmm. And then the last question I have is for Titus Matthew. Titus, you have 18 projects that are requesting project funding for the $33 million, and it would be helpful to understand the breakdown for each project individually and how that comes together as a collective. I'd also like to know what type of revenues are being brought in for each building that is currently owned by the City of Phoenix, what those expenses are for each building, and then the breakdown of capital needs for each one of those buildings. And then the last thing would to be request, what's the estimated value for each one of those buildings? And the reason I'm requesting this, and Titus and I had a meeting last week with Gina Montez to discuss some of these, Chairwoman, just to better understand where this money's going, because we are taking out debt with these bonds and that debt needs to be serviced. And my understanding from our conversation is that all 18 of these buildings are free and clear, and if there's other alternatives to figure out how to have the existing revenues or income to support those capital needs, especially because the buildings are free and clear, is it really necessary for us to add this large of a request for the bond to take existing debt? So we really want to figure out what's there and have a deeper dive into those 18 units. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your comments. I wanted to just say I think that there was some earlier questions about presenting information around the ARPA funds and home funds and existing funds so that they could see how they might be leveraged with the GEO bond funds. And so that might be a little bit of confusion. A lot of those are projects that are already funded and underway. I think it was more of a combination. So maybe when you're talking about your projects, just to say this is another source This is part of the leverage that we're providing information to the subcommittee around that, and then just which ones are the very specific projects that are going to be listed under the GO bond. So I do think that is a little bit confusing because they were helping to provide context and a greater information about some of the recent ARPA and home funds that were allocated to this city. So maybe if you can just clarify when you're doing that. Other committee questions, input, statements, please? Go ahead.
Yeah, thank you so much for the information. I just had one question. I'm in District 7, and I was really interested in the Cesar Chavez Senior Center in particular. I know there's a great need in the community for that. You guys listed information about the food production as a service, all right, but what other services are going to be provided out of that? And then do you have like a projection? I know you have the number of residents that live in the area, but a projected number of seniors that you anticipate the center to support. And then lastly would be there's a South Phoenix Senior Center off of 7th Street, I believe. How would that be impacted or different than this senior center here?
So, Madam Chair and Subcommittee Member Centers, am I pronouncing that correctly? So let me try to address your multiple questions. In terms of the services that we provide at our senior centers, we provide congregate and home delivered meals. We also provide different types of activity and programming, whether it's physical activity, activities that promote the continued development of mental and physical capabilities. We have presenters, we have arts, we have exercises. There is an array of services that are provided at our senior centers. I will share with you that we have some basic programming in place, but we really rely upon our senior center members at that particular location to tell us what it is they want to see. So there can be arts programs. We have field trips that individuals will go on, so it can be to different recreational areas. It could be to museums, arts, culture. So it's just a variety of services that support the needs of older adults, if you will, in our community, ages 55 and older. As it relates to the number of individuals who would be eligible, typically we take a look at our senior center membership as anyone who is ages 55 years and older. And based upon the most recent census from 2020, there are more than 25,000 individuals that are ages 55 and older that are in, if you will, the zip codes around that area, which are 85040, 85041, 85043, and 85339. And then relative to your third question, if I've captured all of them, in terms of our South Mountain Senior Center, which you're correct, is located on Alta Vista, so between Baseline and Southern, right off of Central Avenue. We endeavor, when we're citing our senior centers, to try and place them in community, so that individual senior center members are going in their community and attending their programming, as well as they're engaging and supporting and interacting with folks who live in their community. I don't have the specific number of individuals who are currently attending the South Mountain Senior Center who live in those 3 zip codes. I could get that for you, but we do know there are 1,000 current senior center members that live within, that are current senior center members. Now they could be at different locations that fit within those 3 zip codes. Did I capture all the questions?
Yeah, it was great.
All right,
and
thank
then
you.
I guess a follow-up would be, is the South Mountain, since it's already currently servicing those zip codes, is that at capacity?
So, Madam Chair and Subcommittee Members Centers, the numbers that I identified potentially could be individuals that would come. We are not necessarily at capacity at the South Mountain Senior Center, but our concern, if you will, or why we proposed it is that when you look at those 3 zip codes, and let's just say you take a look at the center of District 7, which is about 59th, 67th Avenue and Lower Buckeye, it's about a 5 to 7 mile drive or commute or delivery service, taxi services that we use that someone's going to. So we feel confident, if you will, that we will be able to maintain the current membership that's at the South Mountain Senior Center, as well as have enough members who live within that general area and meet the criteria to be able to support a new senior center. All right, thank you.
Again, thank you for your questions, and I want to make sure that we have two committee members. I see Subcommittee Member Feaster has her hand up, so go ahead.
Thank you. It's always hard to not want to interrupt and be respectful and be online. First off, I want to thank you all for the presentation. This was very, very good. I know how hard you all work. I have worked with many, with Marshall and Rachel. I haven't had the benefit of working with Titus, but I know how complicated this is. And, but I do have a couple of questions and really more of a thought process. Gina, I'd like to take you up on your offer. I think we should see what you would want to do in capital projects for homelessness. I think given all the attention that continues to swirl around this issue, and even though the ARPA dollars have been fabulous, I think I think the committee would benefit from seeing what your recommendations are. I know you were limited by the city council and city manager's office, but we are not. And so I would like to see your list, if that's, or, you know, what your proposals would be, if that's possible at a future meeting. The other thing is, it strikes me still that these are siloed in 3 departments, and that you're not, I'd love you to break the mold. And let me give you an example. At the Cesar Chavez Senior Center, you're going to build proposing to build the new 12,000 square foot. What if you put 3 floors of senior housing above that and co-located? The city tends to, as most cities do, tends to have these services siloed. And I think it's worth, let's start to break the mold, that saying, where there are city services, could we not add city housing? And using maybe some of the other ARPA dollars or the partnerships that Rachel talked about. And again, this is really homelessness prevention. If you focused on senior housing, because that's where some of our most vulnerable people who are on fixed incomes with rising rental rates people are being thrown out and really having nowhere else to go because they can't work harder or work more. They're on fixed incomes. So I would just suggest that as you're looking at these, it would be great to have that conversation. I know you have a disposition list of land, city land that you want to dispose of, but looking at where you're offering look at the senior centers, look at the housing, can you not co-locate some of this material, so, and the factual, and try and think out of the box of where you might co-locate housing with other services.
Madam Chair, if I could
Please
respond, we'd be happy to provide some of a proposal regarding homeless services, and to just address your I think very welcome suggestion or recommendation on co-locating housing with senior services and being more creative. That is something that we are exploring, and we'd be happy to look further at that. One example is the Helen Drake Senior Center has some excess land, that's in District 5, and we are looking at when we open up an RFP for some of our city-owned lots, that being one of them, to try to identify a developer to develop some housing on that site. So we're very open. I think that's good feedback for us to say that we definitely as a city need to not be focused so much on our silos. And even when they're all reporting into one deputy city manager, we tend to think in those ways. And so I do think that is an excellent recommendation and something we are pursuing in a limited way, but would like to look at further. We'll have to go back and look at how, with respect to this particular site and proposal, and whether it might be possible in this context, and would be happy to bring back further information at a future meeting about that.
And this might be too far down the line, but I think, looking at library space, I used to be deeply involved in the Friends of the Library, so I know that the Phoenix system well. Even, I know Rachel knows this, we've been working a lot on the notion of locating workforce housing on school district property, and the city has been involved in that conversation as well. So I just think, even if it's a small portion of the GEO bond, bringing that into the conversation to the community, that you are leveraging multiple area resources, I think is a really sound and sets you up for future. I know the mayor's idea is to go to the voters every 5 years with a smaller package. That bringing that into the lexicon of how we're talking about this, I think could be really useful and would make it easier, I think, for the voters to accept this, because it looks like the city's really leveraging the variety of resources it has that it may not have thought of it. So the Cesar Chavez project may be too far down the line, but I think communicating that you are working on those, leveraging those other resources, can be a very strong message to the public.
Madam Chair, a few things. Titus would like to respond to a question on the debt, and then I also was reminded that we actually were prepared in the event that we had the question about homeless facilities, and we have a slide that we can bring up if you would like to entertain that after Titus has a chance to respond, if that's okay.
Madam Chair and the members of the committee, I just want to clarify, our affordable portfolio comprises 17 complexes. The 18th complex that I've included for this request is Santa Fe Springs, and that particular complex has debt. So that debt on that property is over $14 million. I just want to clarify that.
And I would like to see that slide.
Can you see it now? It's on my screen, but I'm not sure.
So I'm sorry, who requested, was that a subcommittee member? Yes, please, let's go ahead. Is that okay with the rest of the subcommittee? Yes, please, bring up the slide.
The last one, 39.
From the,
We good? Can you see it? Oh, good. So thank you, Subcommittee Member Feaster. In preparation for that question, we put together some of the things that the homeless service system continues to need. One of the things I mentioned earlier, we have funded, we have $15 million set aside for one hotel-motel conversion for acquisition, rehabilitation for permanent supportive housing, but that is a huge need. One, we all know that housing ends homelessness, so having the opportunity to do another permanent supportive housing, hotel-motel conversion, or bridge housing for a hotel-motel for non-congregate shelter is a top priority. And then an acquisition and rehabilitation of facilities for geographically dispersed congregate shelter. We all know that there is a large congregate shelter in downtown Phoenix. We as a city are looking at doing smaller, what we're calling pocket shelters, geographically dispersed throughout the city. So looking for facilities there. And then, of course, as Deputy City Manager Gina Montez mentioned earlier, we have had one-time funds that we've been able to invest with capital investments and some operating, but that ends in December of 2024. So we are really hoping to find additional operating funding for all of these newly opened shelters and permanent supportive housing sites that we've already invested in. Thank you.
Go ahead, Gina.
And Madam Chair, members of the subcommittee, we would come back and bring you further detail with dollar amounts for the kind of general needs that we provided on the slides.
I was going to ask some clarity, but let me just make sure there's not any more subcommittee members. Go ahead.
Yes, thank you. I have a question on the last item, Rachel. So the operational funding for the newly opened shelters, I thought that most of the GO bonding was for capital expenses and not for any kind of operational funding. So I was wondering if I could have some clarity on that.
That is correct, Madam Chair, Member Ellis. That's kind of a reminder to us that we have to think about the operating funding going forward, but this is for capital investment, so it wouldn't be for operating.
So I just wanted to first lend my support for Vice Chair Pfister's idea that we take a look at co-location, both more broadly and at the Cesar Chavez site in particular. From what I know of the site, it seems that there's maybe an opportunity there, especially given its location in the middle of a park, maybe with minimal view shed impact if we were to go up a couple stories there. But my question is about land banking. So it's something that's identified in the housing plan as a long-term goal. And I'm wondering, was there consideration of using bond funding for that? Or if not, where it's anticipated funding for something like that would come from?
Thank you, Madam Chair and members of the committee. So when we put together our package for GeoBond requests, the premise was looking at what we have today and what other needs in terms of how we can help best keep our residents staying in affordable units. But in addition to that, we have received ARPA funding. So one of the things we're looking at is doing a community land trust. So part of the Housing Phoenix plan, we have single-family parcels and multifamily parcels. We're going to start with doing RFPs in the fall, and our first one we're hoping to go is hopefully end of October. So one of the things we have to look at is, can we transfer with the council approval, if the mayor and council so choose, one of the considerations could be moving those single-family parcels to the community land trust, so they remain affordable indefinitely. On the multifamily side, we haven't come to a conclusion yet, and that's a recommendation I'm discussing at policy as to how we're going to manage that. But yes, to answer your question, we have looked at some possible also leveraging geo bonds with other funding to see what's the best bang for the buck we can get. So one of the requests for housing is also to do a capital needs assessment across the entire affordable housing portfolio. Thank you.
I want to give committee member Chapman, who's virtual, and then anybody else. Okay, Mr.
Chairwoman Devine and Deputy City Manager Montez, we talked about in the agenda, discuss project concepts outside those identified in this capital project. And we know from last week, we were both at the trailer park where 47 families are about to be displaced at Buckeye and 18th Avenue. And would like to, recommend that the housing department, Titus department, really look at how the city is going to address trailer parks. This is the second one that I've heard of in this past year of trailer parks that have conveyed to new ownership, and all the existing tenants / owners, because they rent properties that have connection to utility but own the manufactured home or the trailer. We have a huge need, and really are concerned with displacement and gentrification in South Central Avenue between the Sevens with the light rail. And we've seen nationally in LA, in Denver, in Seattle, in other low-income areas that have been displaced and gentrified, especially with those that are most vulnerable in our communities, like those who reside in trailer parks. So really would like to have the department look at, how that might be introduced. I know it's going to be too late to resolve the immediate need of those 47 residents that are being displaced, but we've identified over 1,200 residents between the sevens on Central Avenue on the new $1 billion light rail investment that are threatened with the same issue. So it's really going to be important that we put these type of you guys concepts, into our housing plan and how we work with those that are most vulnerable and susceptible to displacement. Thank you.
Thank you again for those comments. My question of clarity is you have taken down the questions and comments of the subcommittee members, and then that will be responded to at the next subcommittee meeting. Is that Deputy City Manager Montez?
Yes, Madam Chair, members of the subcommittee, we'll see what information we can provide. If we can get it before that, so you can have, a little bit more in advance than that, we'll go back and see how quickly we can get you answers. We'd like to provide you the information, sooner than the next meeting, much sooner if we can, but we'll go back and kind of see what we have readily available. Some of it will require compiling things, and so we'll be trying to get that to you very timely.
Thank you. And I want to thank all the subcommittee members for your input, comments, and questions. And then we're going to move to, we have another important process for public comment. We will now open our public comment period. And at this point, I'm going to ask the city attorney to explain the rule of public comment in the GeoBond committee meetings.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair. Members of the public may speak to comment on the general obligation bond program. The city code requires speakers to present their comments in a respectful and courteous manner. Profane language, tweets, threats, or personal attacks on members of the public, council members, committee members, or staff are not allowed. A person who violates these rules will lose the opportunity to continue to speak. The committee and staff cannot discuss or comment on matters related to pending claims or litigation.
Thank you. We have 6 virtual speakers registered today. Oh, we have 7 speakers registered today, including 6 virtual participants wishing to speak. I will give each speaker 2 minutes. We will start with the virtual participants. When your name is called, your audio device will be unmuted and you may begin your remarks. At the conclusion of the virtual speakers, we will invite in-person attendees to the podium to address the committee. I will now, do I read the names or does somebody else read those names? Okay, thank you. We're now hear from our first virtual speaker.
Our first speaker is Murphy Bannerman, followed by Cynthia Graber. Murphy, are you on the line?
I am on the line, but I don't wish to speak. Sorry.
Oh, no worries. Our next speaker is Cynthia Graber, followed by Pam Fitzgerald. Cynthia, are you on the line? Cynthia, are you there? Oops, Cynthia, if you are there, we cannot hear you. All right, our next speaker will be Pam Fitzgerald, followed by Austin Frank. Pam, are you on the line?
I am on the line. Can you hear me?
Oh, yes, we can, and you may proceed.
Right. My name is Pam Fitzgerald, and I have lived in my current home in the neighborhood of 19th Avenue in Glendale, where Santa Fe Springs is, for 52 years. However, I've been in this community since I was in 5th grade, attending Orangewood Elementary and Washington High School, and I raised my children in this neighborhood. This used to be a safe, clean community, but I have the City of Phoenix to thank for the fact that it is no longer the case. Everything changed in 2010 when the city purchased Santa Fe Springs to, quote, stabilize the area. What a joke. This purchase and the negligence of the City of Phoenix has turned this neighborhood into one of the worst crime areas in Phoenix. Your own former housing director admitted that she had gotten the balance of people in Santa Fe Springs all wrong. The property management company was totally and completely negligent while being paid huge sums of money to manage this complex. Santa Fe Springs became a crime-infested, rotting slum complex that would have been abated had it been owned by a private entity. Complaints included no heat, no air, no water, mold, rats, roaches, bed bugs, electrical issues, plumbing issues, and no timely repairs were made. The city was a slumlord. The crime that was allowed and accepted in this complex bled into our community and the surrounding businesses. The fact that the neighborhood had to take complaints to the former city manager to try to get something done about this nightmare in our neighborhood tells me the city was totally criminally negligent. You ruined our neighborhood. Now it is time for you to fix what you broke. The new management company and the new housing director are working very hard to fix this issue, but they need $15 million to be in compliance and make these apartments safe, livable, and trauma-free for families and children who live there. Just because you need affordable housing doesn't mean you should live in a deplorable apartment complex. Making Santa Fe Springs a better place to live will help heal our neighborhood also. Please make sure this happens. Thank you.
Our next speaker is Austin Frank, followed by Leandro Echeverria. Austin, are you on the line? Austin is not on the line. Our next speaker is Leandro Echeverria, followed by Annie Ender. Leandro, are you on the line? Leandro is not on the line. Our next speaker is Annie Ender, followed by Cynthia Graber. Annie, are you on the line?
I am.
Perfect. We can hear you, and you may proceed.
Great. Thank you. Good morning. My name is Ann Ender, and I'm a neighborhood leader, and I'm also the president of Operation Blue Ribbon. I have had the great opportunity to work with the neighborhood leaders, some participating on this call, from the VIP Coalition and in the 23rd Avenue and Northern Neighborhood Preservation Task Force, just to name a few. But the point is that we are all very concerned citizens. Many of us have lived here for generations, including myself, and we love this city and want to protect our quality of life. However, our neighborhoods and safety has deteriorated due to decisions made by the city. Lack of oversight and enforcement of the Santa Fe Spring apartment complex has been responsible for over 80% of the calls for service to Phoenix Police Department. Then that's within just the mile radius grid. Additionally, crime from this property, coupled with the crime at 19th Avenue in Glendale, known as Ground Zero for fentanyl use and distribution, have created unsafe environments for homeowners and business owners. Clearly, our neighborhoods are no longer the areas families want to move to or that the long-term residents initially settled to. And while our property values decline, our property taxes don't. So therefore, not until Mr. Matthew and Gina Montez joined the housing department and along with a new property manager or management company, and in light of staff shortages, the Phoenix Police Department Net Squad, have we seen any real improvement? The city has a responsibility to the taxpayer to ensure public safety and quality of life. If this were a privately owned property, it would have been abated. So as the city continues to prioritize funding for a population of people that at least 70% refuse services for, our neighborhoods and homes deteriorate. I respectfully request approval of the $15 million to revitalize the Santa Fe Spring apartments, as well as any other properties throughout the city. Please bring restoration to our neighborhoods and lives. Thank you.
Our next speaker is Cynthia Graber, followed by Eric Neeson in Upper Council Chambers. Cynthia, are you on the line? Cynthia, if you're there, we cannot hear you. Our next speaker will be Eric Nielsen in Upper Council Chambers.
Hi, my name's Eric. I'm going to keep this kind of short because I don't want to get too angry. This is an issue I'm very passionate about. I'd like to start off by pointing out that at the city council meeting where they wanted to give the cops a raise to try to help keep some of the homeless issues in check, this whole room was full of people just talking crap. Yet, by the same token, here we are, a great forum to give good ideas to help the homeless. I don't see a single one of those people offering you guys a freaking bone. The best I could come up with is the city could perhaps develop maybe an app for the homeless that could be used in other cities as well. You could geolocate things such as electrical outlets, water fountains, et cetera, et cetera. But let me just stop there for that because there's plenty of time to talk about that later. What I want to talk about is I want to know who runs Central Arizona Shelter Services, because you're telling me the city paid over $1 million and they were able to house 200 people. That's ridiculous. You could get 200 apartments for that amount. And the DEA calls Phoenix the tip of the spear for a reason. The drug market at Cass is valued at over $1 million monthly. So not only can those people house themselves cheaper than you can, they can get high all day while they do it. So I think there should be a criminal investigation into the Board of Central Arizona Shelter Services for what's been going on here, because they're fleecing you guys. And that's all I have to say. Thank you for your time.
And our final speaker is Cynthia Graber. Cynthia, are you on the line?
Yes, can you hear me?
Oh, yes, we can, and you may proceed.
Finally. Sorry, I had to go to my phone. Sorry about that. Anyways, thank you. My name is Cynthia Graber. I'm a fourth-generation native. I built my home 27 years ago in a community I loved. My roots are deep. My commitment to Phoenix is always better for the next generation is my dream. In 2010, the city of Phoenix purchased Santa Fe Apartments, 310 units at 17th Drive in Glendale, with $10 million in neighborhood stabilization funds. What was accomplished by this purchase was the destabilization of the entire neighborhood and businesses, including this apartment complex. The property managers failed to be accountable and let this complex decay and produce a very criminal atmosphere. In 2019, neighborhood leaders brought this to the attention of our then city manager, Ed Zucker, and the many problems with this complex. There were over 3,600 calls for service, which included drugs, assaults, gunshots, overdoses, rapes, and death. Constant trauma to the 60 children living at Santa Fe Apartments. Sexual offenders were living at this complex, and this complex was not run crime-free or adhering to the rules of HUD. Any other apartment complex would have been abated and closed down by Maricopa County. The city housing director, who has since left the city of Phoenix, admitted to the wrong tenant mix. After in-depth research, including interviews with residents, Yelp and Google reviews, engineers, and city staff, the following problems are listed. Residents complained of no running water, no air conditioning, no heating, electrical problems, sewer backup, mold, rats, roaches, bed bugs, and constant criminal activity. The city created a very restrictive deed when purchasing Santa Fe. They have a choice: either invest $15 million to make this apartment code compliant or reverse the restrictive deed with HUD and let someone purchase the complex. The city has committed to repairing the property. Our new housing director, Titus has been instrumental in creating a checklist of all areas to bring this complex to compliance. The city also finally terminated the former apartment managers and replaced with new property managers in April of 2022. $15 million is required to make this complex code compliant. Thank you very much for trying me 3 times. Thank you.
Madam Chair, that was our final speaker.
Oh, thank you very much. One more comment from a subcommittee.
Yeah, I want to thank the public for attending and sharing those concerns. And when I hear this angst in the community, in the neighborhood, and all the challenges that they're facing, this bond is not going to be available till 2024, and there's no way that those neighbors should wait for 2 years to get this investment into their community. There's just no way. And so, I look at the budgets and those in the city that, this is an immediate need, not a bond need for 2 years from now. So I just want to be, aware that, and I hope the public's aware that these funds will not be immediately available to address the needs that you're going to face over the next 2 years. Thank you.
Thank you. And I'm sorry, I should have concluded the public comment period and then taken your comment. But I will close the public comment period. And I also want to thank all the subcommittee members' input, the virtual community members that spoke, and then the in-person people that spoke. All important comments, all good for all of us to hear. Based on today's discussion, do any subcommittee members have requests for next meeting agenda items? We'll be receiving the staff materials prior if you have it ready. Otherwise, we'll have it for the next subcommittee meeting.
Chairwoman Devine, I do have a request. Titus, you discussed in the meeting we had last week of the sources of funds for the East Lake project, the $21 million request. Can you please provide those additional source of funds and how many of those funds have actually been secured for the next phase of that project? Thank you.
Thank you for that question. Any other comments? Our next meeting is scheduled for September 9th, 2022. Subcommittee members, please notify staff in advance if you have a conflict with this meeting date, and hopefully we'll be able to get everyone in person for that meeting. This meeting is adjourned.